Yeah, hi folks. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Yes, folks, Laurel Hubbard is not a she, he's a biological he. And it doesn't matter how much testosterone reducing medication he takes, he will always be a biological man. Now, there's no malice in that statement, that is a statement of fact. So for him to be competing as a woman is not only a travesty to women, it is downright dishonesty as well.
Let's have a look at this vexed issue of trans people in sport. We focused on this last night, and the New Zealand weightlifter Laurel Hubbard, who lived the first 35 years of her life as a man, obviously went through puberty as a man, is now in the women's weightlifting, the super heavyweight division in the Tokyo Olympics. That's already forced out a Tongan weightlifter because there was only room for one space from the Oceania group, apparently. So a Tongan weightlifter, a 21-year-old woman, has missed out. Liz, this is just so unfair to women born as women trying to compete.
Oh, it's worse than unfair, Chris. We're literally buying into an alternate reality here. I mean, when we're talking about the Olympics, we are talking about people at the top of their game. They have trained for years. They have dedicated their lives to making it here. And like you say, this was a 35-year-old man who'd never competed internationally before, decided to transition, and has since taken out several elite titles competing as a woman. It doesn't matter. If you transition post-puberty, you will always have, as a man, greater muscle mass, greater bone density, you'll be faster, you have even greater lung capacity. I mean, it's patently absurd that the Olympics, which is the highest you can go in any sport across the world, are now bowing the knee to the transgender agenda.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening, folks. This is all about forcing people to believe that transgender women are women when they're not.
Would argue what we all know to be untrue, and that is biologically, you will always be different. And so competing against women, of course you have an unfair advantage, and of course you will take out the titles. And as much as it's unfair for that Tongan woman to now miss out on going to the Olympics, which has probably been a lifelong dream for her, for which she's worked extremely hard, just you wait until Hubbard actually competes and takes titles at the Olympics. Are we really letting this happen now, that women are going to miss out on the recognition they deserve on the world stage because of this agenda, and us buying into this alternate reality that lobby has been pushing for so hard and so long?
Hubbard lived for 35 years as a male and did not compete in international weightlifting. She transitioned in 2012 and has since won several medals and meets all of the IOC's requirements. Some of her rivals say she will have an unfair advantage in terms of physiology and strength, with Belgium's Anna van Bellingen claiming her presence would be like a bad joke for other competitors.
Even if Laurel Hubbard doesn't win a medal, they will have already taken the slot of a woman who would have got to the Olympics, a woman who has trained all of her life to get to the Olympics. So,
exactly, but the trans activists don't care about that.
So this idea that a trans inclusion policy is progressive and that it's inclusive is wrong. It's actually an exclusionary policy.
Yes, it clearly discriminates against women.
But what does the science say?
Biological males have significant performance advantages over biological females by virtue of their exposure to testosterone and other hormones during development. Does lowering or suppressing testosterone for 12 months or longer remove typically male advantages? And the answer from more than a dozen studies is a pretty emphatic no.
World Rugby decided to ban transgender women at international level, saying that it couldn't assure safety and fairness for women competing against trans women.
Yeah, anyway, now to some more evidence.
Hubbard set to become first transgender athlete to compete at Olympics after IOC accepts rule change. So just to give a bit of background for people who don't know, despite not actually getting a total in the first qualifying period, Laurel Hubbard was able to make the Olympics due to the changes that the IWF put in place because of COVID. So that means that Laurel Hubbard is going to be the first ever transgender athlete at the Olympics. She's going to qualify in the continental slot. She took silver in 2017 at the World Championships. A couple of athletes recently have started speaking out against her. A Belgian lifter called Anna van Bellingen, I think, said that it's like a bad joke. And then she said, because I do believe that everybody should have access to sports, but not at the expense of other people. So more and more people have spoken up about this. Zach, do you want to go in first? What are your thoughts on Laurel Hubbard being at the Olympics and taking the place of, another woman?
Yeah, I obviously covered this on my channel, and the thing that I looked at primarily were the numbers, because I think we can join alongside the heavily political and charged on both sides, if you will, argument, or we can decide to look at this as weightlifters and weightlifting coaches, which is something that I feel like I'm a professional in and something that I'm an expert in. So that's where I felt like my strength was in weighing in. And if you look at what she was able to do as a junior with, I think it was a 300 total at the age of 18 or 19, 135 in the snatch and 170 in the clean and jerk, but it ended up being 165 or whatever. Her meet total best was 300.
And can I just confirm, we're talking about, this is pre-transition?
Yes, this is long before transition, right? So at 18, and for a super heavyweight male, that's good. That means you're a good weightlifter, you're a practiced weightlifter, but it's by no means is it elite.
Right.
There's not much other competition history, at least that I could find of hers, until transitioning when she turned 35. Yeah, 35. And then she competed in the a championship. I don't know. I think it was the Australian Open or something, and she won it. And then she was invited to Worlds. And those totals were 275 and, right around 270. And she went from being quite an unremarkable junior male lifter to the second best weightlifter in the world.
Yeah, it's not possible, is it?
Yeah.
So that's where I draw my line, right? And I guess maybe that's me just picking and choosing data. Maybe that's not right. But now we're seeing females, we're seeing women step up and say that they don't believe that this is fair also, which is something that I was kind of hoping for.
I think we've all been hoping for that.
And I think there's a list of females on her Wikipedia page who are pretty much against this. And there's a coach in Australia who's pretty outspoken about this.
Yeah.
So
I think maybe the reason for that is because there was another Australian girl who would have taken the continental slot.
Australian or Tongan?
Yes.
And would be going to the Olympics if it wasn't for the fact that Laurel's taken it. Owen, what do you think? Because I like Zach's point of being an average, mediocre super on the men's side, and then suddenly, albeit the Russians and the Chinese weren't there, but ultimately she ended up taking silver at the World Champs.
I suppose if we had come at this from, so Zach said from a weightlifting coach point of view, which is obviously the first thing any one of us would have thought about. But if you want to come at it from, I suppose if anyone listening who doesn't know who I am, would, a former life was a biochemist, worked in the pharmaceutical industry. So if you want to look at this from a scientific point of view, a legitimate paper, Springer, it's a legitimate journal, came out last year. So it was titled Transgender Women in Female Category of Sports, Perspectives on Testosterone Suppression and Performance Advantage. Okay, so there was a woman on the research team as well, Emma Hilton, and Tommy Lundberg was also on it. So Springer is Springer is a legitimate journal. It's not a kiss me ass kind of journal. Basically, they followed a lot of different women and the effects of hormonal changes over the course of a period of time. And after 12 months, the approximate loss in muscle area strength And strength was like 5% after 12 months, which is obviously minuscule. It's absolutely nothing in comparison to the vast percentage difference you'd see across men and women. So.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, now to New Zealand.
A celebration for 4 Kiwi weightlifters after their first Olympics.
It's overwhelming, emotional, exciting. It's so many things.
It's actually a record team of 5. Only one was a stark absence at the official announcement today. Cameron McTaggart, Megan Signal, Kana Andrews-Nahu and David Leety all recognised for their achievement.
It's pretty epic. I mean, it's been a lifelong dream. Ever since I can remember, I've always wanted to be an Olympian.
History maker Laurel Hubbard, though, continues to keep a low profile.
Yeah, he's gone into hiding. Or activists are hiding him.
It's unlikely she'll be seen until she competes in Tokyo. And when it came time to talk about their absent teammate...
She has a right to be part of the team, so yeah, that's all I can say about it.
That's all I can say about it.
To be honest, I don't feel comfortable.
She's been silenced too.
Commenting on that because today is all about us.
I don't focus on that stuff.
So is he.
Because, my training is my training.
A former Kiwi Olympic lifter suspects they may have been told to keep quiet.
Of course they have.
It's very hard for athletes to speak and be heard and then not dealt to in a way for it. Dealt to might be a bit harsh, but consequences.
There's been nothing about towing the line. She's part of the team.
The issue's gone global.
New Zealand weightlifter Laurel Hubbard makes history.
And drawn the ire of an outspoken British talk host. Piers Morgan labelling her inclusion at the Games a mistake that, quote, destroys women's rights to equality and fairness and will kill the Olympic dream for female athletes. A respected sports doctor here is very understanding of Hubbard's situation and admires her trailblazing Olympic spot, but questions the science.
It's more than testosterone. That's only part of the story. It's also their frame, their bones, and their levers. Their arms and their legs are longer.
Dr. Hellerman says change is needed.
And I think there is something to say for strength and power sports and contact sports in particular, that transgenders have their own division.
Yeah, but transgender activists will never allow a separate division because that would mean transgender women are not women, and they will never admit that.
Rules are rules, but questions are being raised again about the fairness of her entry. Laurel Hubbard's international career looked like coming to a painful end at the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games 3 years ago. But Hubbard re-emerged in 2019 and early last year, doing enough to qualify for Tokyo.
It is important for us to note that Laurel has met the New Zealand Olympic Committee selection criteria based on performance. And importantly, Laurel has met the International Weightlifting Federation eligibility criteria for athletes who have transitioned from male to female.
Yeah, if she truly believed this is the right thing to do, there would be no need to convince people.
The 43-year-old is a genuine medal prospect in the 87 kilo plus division.
This isn't around opinion, this is around the selection policies and criteria, and we're very proud to have followed that through.
It will divide people. There'll be hard conversations. That's just the world we live in.
Medical and sports experts spoken to by One News say the IOC and weightlifting rules are the issue. Hubbard's testosterone levels have to be under a certain amount, but some argue that's unfair. Females usually have minimal testosterone, well below Hubbard's levels. Others say the advantage is more muscle mass, height and long levers.
Someone who's had testosterone for 35 years of their life competing against someone who's had maybe 1/10 of even that amount of testosterone, it just doesn't make sense.
Former lifter Lambrex is part of the Save Women's Sport Australasia group, which is urging the government and Sport NZ to review the rules.
I really think that after 2018, somebody should have done something. Things could have been done a lot better, which probably could have made her life a little bit easier, but also the life of our other athletes a lot easier.
Well, I mean, it's a debate every day, isn't it? I don't know there's a single answer.
Behind closed doors, some athletes are firmly against the selection, but have been told not to comment.
But have been told not to comment. We're now living in communist China.
Laurel Hubbard didn't appear today, but is likely to front at the Olympics. Hubbard's selection and entry into the Commonwealth Games was a distraction 3 years ago. Expect that to be elevated either way to new levels in Tokyo. Right, so where does Laurel Hubbard rank amongst the other competitors in her division at the Olympics? The best lifter in the world at the moment is China's Li Wenwen. That's her combined total from the two lifting disciplines at the recent Asian Champs. Russia's doping ban means their best athlete won't be in Tokyo. North Korea have pulled out, so there goes Kim Kuk-yang. Ukraine's best lifter could also miss the games because of the country's doping violations. That leaves American Sarah Robles as the other competition to Hubbard, whose 285 combined puts her right in contention for a medal.
Yes, but a real woman could be standing there. Anyway, now to Piers Morgan, who got this one right as well.
This is a proper issue about how far do trans rights override women's rights.
Piers Morgan has blasted the news that New Zealand weightlifter Laurel Hubbard is set to become the first transgender athlete to compete at the Olympics.
Are you happy for anyone born to a male biological body to simply raise their hand without any need for surgery?
Without any need for surgery.
And to compete in the Olympics against women born to female biological bodies.
New Zealand's Olympic Committee named Hubbard as part of the women's team for the Tokyo Games after she satisfied domestic and international criteria. Hubbard became eligible for the Olympics in 2015 when the International Olympic Committee changed its rules to allow transgender athletes to compete as women if their testosterone levels were below a certain threshold.
Holds on. 3 for 3 in the...
The Pacific Games gold medalist identified and competed as male before coming out as transgender in 2013. In a piece for the British Daily Mail, Piers Morgan published a scathing criticism of the decision in the defence of women's rights.
Trying to defend women's rights from a grotesquely unfair situation where people born to male biological bodies who have an obvious superior strength and power are now being able to simply say, I'm female, and compete against women born to female bodies. What am I doing that's so wrong?
Piers raised the issue of Hubbard's unhappy competitors. Belgian weightlifter Anna van Bellingen described the news as like a bad joke, and Hubbard's former teammate Tracy Lambrecht said the concern of female-born weightlifters were being ignored.
Yeah, exactly. And Caitlyn Jenner gets it right as well.
Caitlyn Jenner is coming under fire for remarks she made about transgender athletes. Jenner, who transitioned after an Olympic gold medal career, says she doesn't think trans girls should be allowed to compete in female sports. Those comments are drawing fire as several states now try to ban trans girls from competing. Here's ABC's Zareen Shah.
Tonight, California gubernatorial hopeful Caitlyn Jenner giving this controversial statement to TMZ on trans legislation.
So there's legislation in various states to ban biological boys who are trans from playing girls' sports in school. What's your opinion on that?
Question of fairness. That's why I oppose biological boys who are trans competing in girls' sports in school. It just isn't fair.
Exactly. Yes, folks, it's patently obvious that female weightlifters are getting screwed by this IOC decision. And the only way to counter this is for female weightlifters to boycott it at the Olympics. If they don't stand up now, this nonsense will continue.